believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Lorenz, also known as Ricky Vranz, and a great episode for you today. Today we have returning guest to the Ripple Effect Podcast and also a regular on my other show, The Union of the Unwanted. We have civil rights attorney and co-founder of We the Patriots USA, Brian Festa. And much like past episodes with attorney Brian Festa, we talk about all the current events, all the hot topics, but we also talk a lot about We the Patriots USA, his nonprofit organization, which has helped many people and continues to help many people with religious freedom issues, medical freedom issues, parent rights, First and Second Amendment rights, and many other things. So please go to wethepatriotsusa.org for more information. But before we get into this important conversation, please let me remind you, this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of these discussions and the amazing guests I bring to you, please consider getting some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. Of course, you can rate the show, review the show, post the show anywhere you want, tell people about the show, leave comments. Also, subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're watching or listening to the Ripple Effect Podcast. But if you are in a good financial situation, you can support the show monthly or by sending a tip. There's plenty of ways you can do so. If you check out rippleeffectpodcast.com, you can find links to all these ways of supporting the show. But one of the ways you can do it is sending a one-time donation to our Venmo account, or send a one-time donation to our PayPal account or crypto wallet. And thank you everyone who does. I truly, truly appreciate it. And like I've said in the past, when I get those tips randomly, it gives me a little bit of motivation and a little bit extra energy to make sure I get these shows out in a timely fashion and continue to focus on putting out episodes regardless how busy my life gets. And then, of course, we also have a Patreon page, which is one of the best ways of supporting the show because it's the only guarantee money I get from the Ripple Effect Podcast. I can count on that little bit of money coming in every month. So if I need new headphones, if I need new software, hardware, anything like that, it's nice to know that each month I get a little bit to help with all those expenses. Of course, you can stream Theory 6 music, which is the theme song for the Ripple Effect Podcast. You can look up the EP, The Ripple Effect, and the song is called The Ripple Effect, and that EP is available everywhere you can get music. Other ways of supporting the show is checking out our merch store. The Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com will take you right there, or you can just go to our website, rippleeffectpodcast.com. But however you get there, make sure to check out all the different designs, all the different merch, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, stickers, and much more. It's a great way of supporting Ripple Effect Podcasts and getting some cool stuff. And then, of course, we have some sponsors. One of the most important ones is Content Safe. Matt from Content Safe syncs all my channels together, all my video channels. So I upload to one location, then magically that video, that description and thumbnail appears on all my video channels. So he saves me tons of uploading time. He also set up and runs my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com. So if you're a streamer, podcaster, YouTuber, any type of content creator, and you're looking for some tech help or any type of tech services, talk to Matt from Content Safe. Let him know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect Podcast, and he'll definitely take care of you. The next sponsor is the University of Reason, created by Richard Grove. And these popular autonomy courses can help many of you out there who maybe just want a career change, maybe want to learn some new skills, maybe want to connect with a different community, a freedom-minded, liberty-minded community. Maybe you feel like you're a hamster on a wheel running in place and you just need to do or try something different. And if that's you, please check out the autonomy courses and the University of Reason. Please use the link in the show description or on my website, and you can help yourself and help the Ripple Effect Podcast at the same time. And then last but not least is Element Electrolytes. It's electrolytes that taste amazing. You can put in your water, or you can get flavors to put in your coffee. It'll keep you hydrated and help you with so many issues that are due to dehydration, like muscle cramping, fatigue, migraines. And it's keto friendly, fasting friendly. There's no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. It's sweetened with the stevia leaf. It was formulated by one of the most respected people in the health and nutrition community, Rob Wolf. He's been on the Ripple Effect podcast a few times. He's also been on Joe Rogan and many other podcasts that talk about health and nutrition. And Rob Wolf is also a best-selling author. He works with professional athletes. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, has written plenty of books on the paleo diet, one of the first people to open a CrossFit gym in the U.S. And with all his years of knowledge and experience pushing his body to the max in bodybuilding and many other ventures, he formulated a perfect electrolyte product to help optimize your body and mind. I know there's a lot of electrolyte products out there, but most of them don't have enough of the electrolytes you need. They don't have the right dosages. They have low quality ingredients. And if you want to learn more about what makes Element Electrolytes so unique and why it's the best option, use the link in the show description and read all the science and information backing their formula, their ingredients. And you can also learn why Element Electrolytes specifically focuses on sodium intake and all the benefits of increasing your sodium intake. And please use the link in the show description or on my website for Element Electrolytes to get a free gift with every purchase. It's a special gift just for the Ripple Effect podcast listeners. Finally, that's it. Enjoy this amazing conversation with attorney Festa. Look out for a absolutely amazing conversation with returning guest Alex Craner, which is already recorded and hopefully will be out soon. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.
You don't mind if I'm casual today, do you?
No.
You're always casual. So you can't mind. See, when I go on these podcasters and they're dressed in suits, then I have to do it. But with you, I'm like, half the time you got your Celtics jersey on or your soccer jersey, whatever it is. What are you, a Liverpool fan?
No, I'm weirdly enough, I'm a Spurs fan. There's not many of us, but I'm a Tottenham Hotspurs fan.
No, I mean for soccer, European football.
Yeah, that's what. So there's a team in the English.
Oh, the Spurs. I'm thinking San Antonio.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Yeah, you can easily confuse them with those Spurs. Yeah, the Tottenham Hotspurs. They're English Premier. They're from North London.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Arsenal's are arch rivals because they're also from North London. So they have something called the North London Derby, which is between the two. And the cool thing about English Premier League is that, and just soccer in Europe in general, is just all the history behind it. You know, like my favorite Portuguese club is Sporting Clube de Portugal, and it's an academy that Luis Figo went to, Cristiano Ronaldo went to, and there's a lot of history there, and a lot of greats went there. And then there's even like a lot of politics involved. So one of the most famous Portuguese soccer players is this soccer player called Eusebio, and he was on the Portuguese national team when we lost to England in the semifinals the year that England won in 1966. And Eusebio was a Sporting fan and grew up in the Sporting Academy in Mozambique. And then when he came to the mainland, to Portugal, to go further in his career and join one of the bigger clubs, the dictator of Portugal was Salazar, and he was a huge Benfica fan, which is the Sporting's arch rival. So he forced him to join Benfica. So he's one of the great Portuguese legends that wasn't a part of the Sporting Clube de Portugal, because of politics, basically. Similar stories with like Arvydas Sabonis, great basketball player, played for the Portland Trail Blazers. His son now plays for the Sacramento Kings. And Sabonis came to the NBA really late in life, and people are like, why, if he was so good in Europe, why did he only come to the NBA when he was so old? And it was because of the Soviet Union. They didn't let him leave, and they wanted their biggest stars in Europe. So what they did is he didn't get the opportunity to come to the NBA until the fall of the Soviet Union, and then he got the opportunity. So it's funny how there's so many political stuff in the Scottish League, the Celtics and the Rangers. Like, one's Protestant, the other one's Christian, or whatever it may be, and there's like all this history.
I had no idea. You could be a historian. You really could.
It's funny.
You've read some books, I assume.
Yeah, well, even like Barcelona and Real Madrid, like a lot of people don't realize like the hatred between the two clubs. They're two, one of the biggest rivalries in
Well, I know the fans are crazy. I know the fans like kill each other and stuff. Like that's happened. I mean, I know that, but
yeah. Well, some of the like so Catalina, right? So Barcelona are, they kind of represent the Catalonian culture and people who want their independence from Spain. So like Real
Mhm.
Madrid represents like, the Spain capital, it's the Spanish people, and then Barcelona represents the Catalonian people who want not be a part of Spain and kind of look at themselves like they're slightly different in culture and language and whatnot. So when the two countries or when the two clubs play each other, it's almost like it's more than just the two clubs. It's the two people going at it, the two cultures.
it's even beyond Red Sox Yankees. That was the biggest growing up in New England. That was my biggest rivalry, and that was the biggest sports rivalry I think in America. But this takes it to another level because you're talking about literally the history and the culture of the people. It's not just about the clubs like you said, but that's crazy. Out here in Idaho, we actually have a significant Basque population. So believe it or not, there were quite a few. We don't have much ethnicity outside of Mexicans. There's a lot of Mexicans here. For some reason, we're not really a border state, but we're not that far away. But there's a lot of like migrant workers and things like that. But just out of the blue in Boise, there's not a lot of ethnicity. Like you won't find. It's not like the Northeast where every city has its Chinatown and Little Italy. There's none of that here. There's no Little Italy. There's no Portuguese. There's no Polish. None of that. But in the middle of Boise, there's just this whole area that's Basque, all Basque people from Spain. So it's like weird. We have no other ethnicity, but Basque people settled in Idaho for some reason. I have no idea why. I don't know the history of it, but the food is pretty good. I've tried some of the restaurants like that. It is actually very good. So
Yeah, Spanish food's good. And the thing about Spanish food, it's not very different than Portuguese food because we border them, and there's a lot of
right,
mixing in cultures. If I meet somebody from Spain, typically I can understand their Spanish because it is close to Portuguese. Now, if I meet like Latin
right,
Americans, counting on what country it is, it can be really difficult to understand. Even Brazilians who speak the same language, I've met Brazilians where I have like a really difficult time understanding them because of the accent. Counting on what part of Brazil they're from or whatnot. But it's no different than any other country. And you come to America, and if you're a foreigner, you go to Boston, you think, oh, this is the way English is spoken, and then you go to the South, and you're like, wait, this sounds different than the other English. So it can be difficult. Nobody ever feels like they have an accent and they always feel like they're speaking the language the correct way. So it is
yeah,
hard to pick up on your own accent. But that is one of the beautiful things about the East Coast is there is it's a melting pot. And that's kind of
right,
represents America. It's one of the beautiful things about America is that I'm a foreigner. I was born in northern Portugal in Chaves and came to America and I've embraced the culture, the fact that it is a melting pot. It's one of the beautiful things about this country is I can meet people from all all parts of the world living here. I can but yet there's this like common thing where like everybody's kind of proud of being American and proud of being whatever their culture they're from or country they're from the same, which is I think important. But typically if you get a huge group of immigrants in one location, it usually always happens a similar way. What happens is like in where I'm from in Massachusetts, the big Polish or Portuguese just group of people that are here and that migrated here was because a handful of people moved here, either started businesses or whatnot. And then what happens is people back in Portugal are like, hey, I want to go to America. And then somebody says, hey, I got an uncle or a cousin who has
right.
some business that they can hire you.
Same with the Italians. Like
Exactly.
I grew up in Worcester originally, and there's an Italian neighborhood there, and Shrewsbury Street in Worcester, and then New Haven and Worcester Street in New Haven, and down in Connecticut. And we have these pockets here, the north end of Boston, as you know, and it's the same thing. They were a lot of them were factory workers, whatever, and they brought in their uncle, their cousins, their brother. Everybody came, and it just grew that way. But Idaho is just weird because it's like, obviously this was the West, this was the frontier, right? And so it was settled by pioneers, and there were Native Americans too, of course. But then all of a sudden you just have, you have Mexicans here. So you'll have like steakhouses, a Mexican restaurant. I always judge it by the food. That's how you can tell the settlers there, because you know what? You have those neighborhoods, right? When I say the north end of Boston, what are you thinking of? You're thinking of food. Okay. So it's the same thing. So you have these steakhouses, which is just like, that's your pioneer. That's your average Idaho, whatever. And then you've got Mexican restaurants, and then you've got Basque restaurants. And it's just weird because, European, you think Spanish settlers, I would think European would be, again, the Northeast, because almost all of them came through New York. All right. And then they went either up into New England, or they stayed in New York in the city, right? That's where almost all of them came. It's usually East Coast, up and down the Eastern Seaboard. But you go to the Midwest or the far West, like where we are, you don't expect really to see and we don't have any European settlers, but there's just this pocket of Basque people for some reason. For some reason, they came to Idaho. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but because we don't have anyone else from that region. We don't have any other Spanish regions. We don't have, you mentioned Catalina. We don't have that. We don't have Portuguese. We don't have any of that. But some reason just Basque people settled in the Boise area. I don't know. But it's just strange how that happens. But anyway, I want to get rolling because I don't want to run out of our whole interview time talking about, culture and soccer and restaurants, although it's great conversation. But I know you're going to have to run and I'm going to have to run. So what do we want to talk about today, I guess, is the question. You want to talk about Shot Dead at the Santa Monica Film Festival? That's coming up this weekend. I don't know if this is going to air before Saturday.
I will do my best to get it out. I think it's quite possible I could get it out prior to Saturday. So yeah, we can open up with talking about that and then expand to other work that you're doing. You're constantly, people, please join the email list of We the Patriots USA. Stay updated on what's going on. I'm assuming that's how I got hooked up to your email list. It was right from your website, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And that way you get updates, and you guys are always involved in amazing work and amazing cases. So yeah, let's talk about the film, because initially when it came out, I did share it. It was on YouTube, and I remember watching it with my wife, and my wife's like, "This is on YouTube?" I'm like, "Yes, but I have a feeling not for long." and then eventually it got pulled. So let people know, because I think last time you were on, it was before the film was released. And we talked about it briefly, but let people know if they missed that episode, let people know what the film's about, it being released on YouTube, the issues you had with YouTube, the film festival, and anything else that might be involved.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, if you saw this on YouTube, you're one of the lucky few, because it wasn't on YouTube very long, but it's got over 1 million views. I think we're heading towards 1.5 million views on Rumble alone. And it's on various other platforms. Other people have shared it. Other people have taken the movie and put it on their own platforms without our permission, but we don't care because we didn't place any restrictions on this. We want to share this. We want as many people to see it. So there are actually other people that we found. Somebody's brought it to my attention here and there. Hey, do you know that they're showing Shot Dead? I'm like, nope, but that's fine. Oh, look, it's got 50,000 views on their Rumble channel. Good. All right, add that to the 1.5 million, whatever views we have, just let it go. It came out November 9th. And so when you add up all those views, it's probably got a couple million when you add up all the different platforms it's on. Dr. Mercola wrote a Substack, which gave us another like 500,000 view boost. We had, obviously Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. James Thorpe were in the film. They've promoted it. It's been featured. We had it on, the Megyn Kelly show. We had it on Steve Dace. We had it on a couple of other podcasts. I'm forgetting it. We've had a lot of different people get behind this and feature this film. But the biggest thing is again, this wasn't really a business venture. We lost money making this film. Because you have some experience with broadcasting, how expensive it is to produce media like this. A professional film. You can tell watching it that it was professionally shot. We're blessed to have Jason and Avery Kabrick as part of our team, our film crew, and they are. We want to continue to work with them on other projects, but they are true professionals. Jason was one of those who was fired by the PGA Tour, along with our own Taryn Gregson, who, as you know, has a podcast for us, Faithful Freedom. But she is the producer and director. Taryn actually produced and directed this. But the filmmakers, Jason Avery. Jason was a PGA Tour videographer, and he was let go also over the mandates, the shot mandates. And then, but he still does amazing work. He's got, I mean, this guy he's at the top of his game. He's in demand. He's going to be working the Super Bowl this year. All right. He's going to be one of the camera people that are working the Super Bowl. So he's got plenty of work because he's the creme de la creme in videography and sports videography. And so we're extremely blessed that he's, one of us. He's a true patriot. And he shot this film for us. And you can see that it's obviously very professionally done. And we just want these stories to be told, because these 3 children that are profiled, we don't want them to have died in vain. I mean, obviously it's horrible. They never should have died. They should still be here with us. We shouldn't have had to make this film. And Ricky, I go back and I still talk about this. When I do talks about Shot Dead and stuff, I still mention your show, the interview that you and I had back in like February of 21, I think it was. So what is that, like 3 years ago now? You interviewed me. And, I said, Ricky, I think when this shot comes out, because it wasn't out to the public yet, but it was coming. They were talking about it. And I said, when it comes out, it's going to wake a whole bunch of people up. And our movement's going to grow probably tenfold. And we will win, but I don't want to win that way. I don't know if you remember, I said that. I said, I don't want to win that way. Because I think that is how we ultimately, that's what it's going to take to open people's eyes. People are going to have to die. But I wish that weren't the case. Well, look what happened. Look what happened. Look how many people have died suddenly. All right. That's such a common phrase now. This one. I saw this news reporter that died the other day was 38 years old. Someone else, some actress's daughter, or some actress, 42 years old. Someone else, 21 years old. 16 years old. Ernesto Ramirez, who's featured in our documentary, Ernesto Ramirez Jr., 16 years old, 5 days after taking the Pfizer shot. Trista Martin, 18 years old, 3 months after taking the Pfizer shot. Naomi White died 11 hours after birth, after her mother took the Pfizer shot. So while she was in utero. Those are the stories we profile. Now, there are thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of stories like that, or millions from across the world of either serious injury or death from these shots. Mainstream media doesn't cover it, as you know, but that's the only criticism we received. Everyone loved this film. The one criticism is more than one person came to us and said, I wish you showed just more than 3 stories, because these could be written off as anomalies. These could be written off, these are just these outliers. This doesn't happen to most people. And that's a valid consideration. That's a valid concern. But I just want to defend our position for a moment. The reason we profiled only 3 stories is the purpose of this film was to be different than any other film that's been produced on the COVID shot. Carnage, really, is the only way to describe it. In that it gives you an in-depth, up-close, and personal examination of these children and their families and the loss that they have endured. If we had featured 100 different stories, we could have done that, but we would have had to spend like 30 seconds on each family. That's not really going to give you that deeply personal, in-depth, or we could have had a documentary that was 6 or 7 hours long, I suppose, or we could have released it as a series and had, a couple dozen hours of footage, but nobody's going to watch that. People have short attention spans. We wanted to pack this into about an hour. And the only way that you could really give these families the treatment they deserve, and these children the treatment they deserve and the attention they deserve, is to spend a significant amount of time with just a few. The direction, we thought about that. Well, why don't we try to find a ton of people to show how much this is happening? So the way we kind of countered that is we just profiled these 3 families going into the children, into their homes, into the living rooms, into the children's bedrooms, to the children's grave sites even. Okay, very, very moving, heartbreaking. But then we also had Dr. Thorpe and Dr. McCullough and the whistleblower nurse, Michelle Gershman, talking about what they've seen, the statistics, and what they've seen as far as the explosion, how this has happened. So that's sort of how we gave the other piece, to show that no, it's not just these 3 children, but we really, really wanted to give these 3 families their due, and to show how much they're grieving, and to have them. There's no narrator in this. The parents tell the story. If you watch the film, anyone who's watched it knows there's no narration. Yes, Taryn directed and produced it, but she doesn't speak. You don't even see her on camera. She was there for most of these interviews, sort of directing it and asking questions, but you never see her or hear her. So these families are the stars of this film. And, it's something that at the end of the day, we have to have this chronicled in history. That's the most important thing, so that no one ever forgets this. And we are so, so blessed and so honored that this film, Shot Dead, has been selected as an official selection at the 2024 Santa Monica International Film Festival. And that is being held this weekend, Saturday, February 3rd in Santa Monica. I will be there. My business partner and dear friend Don will be joining me. Dr. Thorpe will be there from the movie. Michelle Gershman from the movie will also be there. We'll all be participating in a panel discussion. And we're going to have some guests of honor have already told us that they're going to be showing up for this as well. My good friend, Ray Flores from California, Children's Health Defense. She's an attorney with Children's Health Defense. Steve Kirsch is planning to attend. Dr. Shannon Kroner, who wrote I'm Unvaccinated and That's Okay, the children's book. You may be aware of it. She also lives in the area. She's going to be coming. So we're going to have a whole sort of host of stars there. But really, if you're in Santa Monica, please come. If you're in Southern California, anywhere really in California, at least from Central Coast down, try to make the trip. I know it's a big state, but try to make the trip down. I think Michelle's driving 3.5 hours or something to get there. She's not really in Southern California. She's more Central Coast. But yeah, try to make the trip. You can use promo code SHOTDEAD to get free passes if you go to the Santa Monica Film Festival website. And yeah, we're expecting a full house. So please check that out. And if you haven't seen it, if you can't make it to California, because I know a lot of your listeners, obviously you're in the Northeast, and a lot of people aren't going to, maybe someone will happen to be visiting or vacationing there. But if you can't make it there, which is probably a good majority of the listeners, go to shotdead.org and watch it and share. That's the most important thing. Again, we didn't do this for money. Yes, you can always make a donation to support us, either on shotdead.org or wethepatriotsusa.org. But the main thing is watch it and share it so that everybody sees this. Because I guarantee you, Ricky, there are still, I know for a fact, I've talked to them, there are still people out there that are considering getting the shot or considering getting it for their children because their kids are due to go to college in the fall. Here we are in the spring semester. Children are getting their acceptance letters, right? They're going to start, this month, next month. All these acceptance letters are going to start flowing in for the fall term. And some of these very prestigious universities, I remember talking to people back in 21 and 22. My son's going to Yale. Do you know how hard he worked for this? He got into Yale. I'm not going to, he's going one way or another. He's going. I said, is it worth his life? I remember I talked to one mother and she agreed with me, but she was hoping that those were just the exceptions, that he's going to be okay. He'll be lucky enough. He won't be one of them. You really want to take that risk? Yes, it's an Ivy League school, but are you willing to risk your child's life just for an Ivy League degree, which in my opinion isn't worth the paper it's printed on anymore? Because these are liberal indoctrination camps, and they're not near the quality they once were. Yes, you still have the name, Harvard, Yale, whatever, Columbia, but to me, it's trash.
Yeah, I like the idea of following 3 families in the movie. It's like that saying, if one person dies, it's a tragedy. If 1 million people die, it's a statistic. It's really easy to look at large numbers and not have a emotional connection to it. But when you follow a family and you see the struggle, the heartbreak, all the things that they're going through, when you connect in that way, I think it's a great way for the viewer to really understand the impact of what, you're trying to show them. And there, like you said, there's so many stories and it's endless. And the thing is, it's not even just from the vaccine, all the heartbreak and tragedy that is directly linked to the vaccine, But what about all the cases of cancer going up? All these other health issues that are increasing, that it's not as easy to connect directly to the vaccine, but we know that there has to be some correlation when you look at, Edward Dowd's work with just all case mortality. People are just dying more often, younger, of more things, like, and you can see that it was happening right when the vaccine was introduced. In Canada, recently I had our mutual friend Dr. Jessica Rose, which you know very well. She was on, and we were talking about just life expectancy in Canada dropping, and just crazy things are happening, and it seems like it's not getting as much attention as it should be, like, because at the end of the day, people knew this was going to happen. And I think a lot of times people deal with trauma in different ways. And I keep saying, as a planet, as the whole human race was traumatized together in one way or another. And a lot of the human race is trying to deal with it by not thinking about it. But there has to be some justice, and there has to be some accountability. And to forgive is okay, but we shouldn't forget, maybe forgive the people who fell for it. Maybe forgive the people who were really rude because you weren't wearing a mask or whatever. Maybe forgive the people who were trying to pressure you into getting vaccinated, or called you a conspiracy theorist or whatever, and disrespected your decision. But at the end of the day, we can't forget, because this idea that it was all like, oh, we had very little information. We could go on and on and on with all the evidence that proves that they knew exactly what they were doing, and that they didn't just know exactly what they're doing. They were suppressing alternative treatments. They're suppressing information about vitamin D and vitamin C, and
Right.
really making sure your immune system is healthy and your body's healthy. Just the lengths they went to make sure that this turned out as bad as it possibly could is undeniable. And I mean, from your perspective, and with all these lawsuits, obviously you're getting a lot of people reaching out during COVID, and now has that slowed down a little bit? Do you still see people still interested in getting justice, or what's your perspective on all that?
Yeah, so now it's not as many asking for help with religious exemptions, because most people either got their exemption or they were fired. So that's mostly over. Now there are obviously still people getting new jobs in healthcare and places like that, colleges and universities that are still requiring it. So they're still asking for help with religious exemptions, but it's not nearly the wave of people that we had in 21 and 22, especially those 2 years, just overwhelming. It's more now vaccine in, or you want to call it, it's a shot injury, but it's more injury and death. People saying, can you help me get justice? They're seeing shot dead and reaching out and saying, hey, my father died, or my wife is seriously disabled now because of this, or my child also died. The list goes on and on and on. Horrible stories, and they want justice. Unfortunately, that's going to be hard to come by. We're fighting for it, and you see at the end of the film, we are trying to put together litigation. We haven't raised the money yet, but we are trying to put litigation, because we do believe that we have a legal theory upon which we can seek justice. Steve Kirsch actually came out with this several months ago, talking about certain batches being adulterated, and that was not disclosed during the emergency use authorization process, and so that there may be a path to victory there. That's not a slam dunk by any means. That the PrEP Act gives a liability shield to these shots, unfortunately, so it's nearly impossible to recover. So most of the people that ask me, based on their particular facts and circumstances, whether it's the Pfizer shot or the Moderna or J&J, I have to tell them it's not something we can help them with right at this moment. We're working on that. Again, it's going to be incredibly expensive. We don't have the funds to front every lawsuit that we take on. Each lawsuit could, even the regular run-of-the-mill lawsuit, not against a giant like Pfizer, could be $50,000 to $100,000. So you're talking about Pfizer going up against them and wrongful death claims. We're going to need quite a bit of money, and we're just not there yet. And we're gathering evidence as well. Ernest Ramirez and the Martins, who are in the film, did agree to be plaintiffs, and that's mentioned at the end of the film. But if anyone can get behind this and help us fund that, we do want to hold them accountable. But realize that this is a David and Goliath battle, the ultimate. I mean, honestly, going up against Pfizer is, in a lot of ways, tougher than going up against the U.S. government. Just because not only of the virtually unlimited financial resources they have, but because of the fear they inflict on people. It's just a name. You mention, Pfizer, and people go running. People are afraid for their lives. They're afraid they're going to be retaliated against. And listen, I don't have any evidence of Pfizer, offing anyone or anything like that. And I'm not going to say that I do. But there's a lot of people that are afraid of that. And a lot of people feel that their fears are justified because they've been targeted and harassed.
People think that stuff doesn't happen. Remember the Carrie Lake tape that came out, with whenever it was, the last 6 months or last year, whatever it was. And in that tape, if people haven't listened to it, they're basically threatening her for her not to run, right? I think that was what he was attempting to do, saying that people from, I don't know, it was from up east or something like that, really want her not to run. And she's like, no, you tell them this and and she's like, and the guy's like, these aren't people you want to piss off. These are the type of people that I jump in my car, I start it, and I hear a giant explosion. And this is a personal conversation. Like, that's what politics really is. It's a dirty game. It's about power. It's about profit. It's about manipulation. It's about, it's literally conspiracy. I've said this over and over again. House of Cards and Game of Thrones is the same story being told in different times. It's just people trying to work their way up, backstabbing, doing backdoor deals. It's literally the same story. I remember Kevin Spacey, even though he's a creep, I know, but so I don't like using this example too much. But
I know I used to like him too back before I learned all the stuff.
yeah, I mean, he did well. It explains why he did so well in such weird. I was a big thriller fan, so I loved movies, suspense thrillers, things with twists, things that were weird. And he was in a bunch of them. And but I remember when he did House of Cards, they asked him, like, because they had a bunch of political consultants and people that were helping write the script, and he's like, how much of what happened in House of Cards was inspired by real life and real events, real stories, real people? And he's like, oh, the only thing that wasn't realistic was how quickly we passed the education bill. And that was a joke, because he's like, there was like, him hooking up with a Secret Service agent. There was, backstabbing. There were people being thrown in front of trains. There's all this stuff going on. And he was making a joke. He's like, listen, all this stuff is inspired by real events, and that's kind of the world we live in. We look at Moscow, we look at Russia, we look at China, we look at politics all over the world, and we're like, oh, do you hear about this story, this politician getting assassinated? But we always give the U.S. a pass. Like, that type of stuff doesn't happen here, and it's like, it's such a illusion we live in. We both of us have been involved in the homeopathic world and alternative treatments and medicines and doctors and for a long time, so I'm sure you're aware of all those mysterious deaths with all those doctors that are going kind of against the grain and not just doing what a good doctor is supposed to do and just give you a pill for everything. And
Dr. Bradstreet, that supposedly committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest, and then they found him face down in a river or something. Yeah. How many people do you know commit suicide by shooting themselves in the chest?
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, how many coincidences until they weren't a coincidence anymore? I mean, there was just huge lists of these doctors, and it's like, how many of these are going to be? And it's funny, now you think about it. I wonder if it was like predetermined that COVID was going to happen the way it was going to happen. Maybe they need to get rid of some of these doctors. Maybe all the people who are going to speak out and have been pushing back.
Dr. Zelenko, Tony Bark. You look at some of these people. I mean, COVID itself is a bioweapon too, and has killed people, not in the way they say. I do believe that it's messed us up. Most of us who didn't take many of us aren't the same anymore. Okay. And I'm not, listen, there's all kinds of theories, conspiracy theories, call them what you will, about the doctors that I just mentioned, or how maybe they've been poisoned somehow. I don't know. I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to go out there because I don't have the evidence. What I will say is that they at the very least timed the release of the shot very close to COVID itself becoming a thing. This is why we had warp speed, Ricky, because now they can just blame those deaths on COVID. They can say, well, COVID has caused things like myocarditis. COVID has caused people to maybe have an increased risk of cancer or something. They can actually blame COVID because it happened so close in time. If it was a normal vaccine, which even normal vaccines, real like quote unquote vaccines, take years usually to be produced, even though they're not properly safety tested either, as you know. But even the regular ones usually take years. The reason they didn't do that with this, I believe, is so that they can just blame COVID and say, well, you can't tell me that it's a shot. This is why we need a vax versus unvax study with regard to COVID. Okay, because just looking at all-cause mortality and data stuff, that doesn't prove anything. Because they can say, well, that's COVID caused all those deaths. COVID caused, the rise in cancer and heart attacks and all these other strokes. They can blame it on actually COVID. They're going to say, how do you know that it wasn't COVID? Because that's a bioweapon too. COVID was a bioweapon. So how do you know it wasn't COVID rather than the shot? So all-cause mortality, unfortunately, that doesn't solve the problem for us. We need an actual study to say the vaccinated COVID jabbed population versus those who didn't get it. Let's look at their mortality and their disease rates. That's what we need.
They could blame it on COVID, but wouldn't they also have to admit then the vaccine didn't work, right? Because it was supposed to protect everybody from COVID.
Well, they've already admitted that, right? They've already admitted that it doesn't prevent you from getting it. They just say you don't get as sick. I guess they're going to have to throw that out the window because you're not going to get as sick from COVID, but you're still going to get cancer. Okay, well, who cares about getting as sick from COVID? I mean, COVID doesn't kill most people. We know that. People are much more worried about heart attacks and cancer, I think. I wasn't worried about really COVID. I mean, all right, maybe the first few days when it came out and what's this, and I didn't know anything about it, but first few days, first few weeks. But once I learned what we all know now, it wasn't something I was scared of. That's why we weren't worried about wearing masks. Except, number one, they didn't work. But even if they did work, it's not something we're really worried about getting. Maybe we should have been, though, because it was created in the lab. And I do believe it was a bioweapon. But as far as dying, in the moment, like dying within like a week or two of getting it, that's what I mean. We weren't worried about that because that didn't happen to most people. Most people who died from COVID died either from things completely unrelated to COVID or died because of hospital protocols, remdesivir, ventilators. That's why people were dying. They weren't dying because of a COVID infection.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go back and you relive some of the just nonsense and some of the things that it just was so obvious we're being lied to. Everything from like, I remember the Instagram page that had people sharing videos of the hospitals being dead, but yet on TV we're being told the hospitals were full. We were being told that New York needed more respirators and, President Trump wasn't getting them the respirators that they needed. And yet there was, whistleblowers saying that the respirators is what was killing people. Everything from in New York's really bad. They banned, I think it was either hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. One of the two was like illegal for a doctor to prescribe, which is insane because that should be between a doctor and their patients. Like they're trained professionals. They're the ones who should making those decisions, not a politician. Everything from, and then what was it? Was it a factory? Hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin? One of their factories like blew up and like had a fire. I remember Dr. Peter McCullough telling me about that one of the times he was on. They were just like, and then Brooke Jackson, the whistleblower from a Pfizer trial. Like they're just endless amounts of doctors and whistleblowers and all these people, and yet some people were just so afraid that they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna do what they tell you. And then there was all the evidence that they're lying to you about just about everything from the mask, right? The Fauci video of Fauci saying, no, the mask doesn't do anything, and all of a sudden, it was the most crucial part of fighting the disease was wearing a mask. It was just, insane. Them telling you that how many politicians told you they would never take the vaccine, and then once Biden was in office, they were promoting the crap out of it. It was just nuts, and it just the fact. I guess my point of saying all this is because people can't forget these things, and people can't let them get just get away with this because they killed people. I mean, senior FDA people who were probably super pro-vaccine at I forget at which point of the approval for what age group. Remember when they resigned? They resigned because they're like, this is so absurd that even us who are pro-vaccine probably completely drank the Kool-Aid on this being a good thing and whatever. Even they were like, okay, now you're going too far. Now you're having pregnant women, even though this has never been tested on pregnant women, and you tell pregnant women not to have sliced meat because of the nitrates, but it's completely okay to have
or tuna fish,
or tuna, but yet completely okay and healthy and even heavily suggested for them to have the COVID vaccine, even though there's, like I said, no tests on them. Like it was insane.
And every other shot. I mean, that's just the pregnancy. Don't get me started. That to me, that's like the most evil is giving a woman who has a baby growing inside of her this poison. And again, we're worried about mercury in fish or nitrates, whatever it is. Not nitrates, but the meats, the listeria and lunch meats and nitrates too. We're worried about all that stuff, but we're gonna pump them full of aluminum and thimerosal, mercury, and and then with the COVID shot with spike protein mRNA, that's gonna mess with your DNA and everything. I mean, it's like, okay, so there was just, and they didn't even test it on pregnant women, so I mean, they barely tested it on anyone, but there were no studies to show. Every other drug or shot, they're supposed to show some sort of proof that it's safe, even if it's not a true double-blind placebo, controlled safety study. They at least have some kind of testing to show whether it's safe or not in pregnancy. But it's all flawed data, of course. But they admitted they didn't even try. They didn't even have any pregnant women in any of the trials. So, but yet we're just going to give this to you. It's just anyone who knows all of this, and I don't know how you couldn't know it because it's all come out, but I guess willful ignorance. But anyone who knows all of this and still stands behind the government, stands behind the CDC, stands behind Big Pharma, the manufacturers of these shots. I just don't know how you live with yourself. I just don't know how you do. Somebody once called me out on social media. It wasn't me, but I got into it with the person. They called out someone else for posting about a sudden death. Somebody who had just lost their child. And it was on, I can't remember, one of like a local news station put a post out about somebody that died, some student athlete that died. And I don't remember where it was. It might have been actually in Connecticut or something. And somebody posted, do you think, I wonder if it was from the shot, do you think he got the shot? And that someone was like, someone else came on, some, rabid pro-vaxxer. How dare you question that or bring that up at a time like this? And of course, they saw no problem with asking all of us our status, whether we had been jabbed, during the pandemic. But put that aside from them. How dare you even bring that up? How dare you suggest that? Nobody should be even mentioning that. And I said, well, how dare you deny that a very real possibility this child died, and in turn are preventing other lives from being saved by you attacking him and trying to suppress his voice. You're deliberately resulting in other children and other people being murdered. And I never got a response, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, I am so sick and tired. You get to a boiling point with people, with their rhetoric and their talking points and just repeating what they heard on CNN or MSNBC or whatever over and over and over again without any shred of logic to it. But it goes beyond that, because when you're actually trying to suppress people from talking and having that conversation, I wonder if the shot killed this young man or this young woman or whatever it is. Once you suppress that, you're actually preventing the information from reaching people that it could help, that it could actually, that information could save lives. That's the whole point of Shot Dead. That's why we made it, is because this information needs to get out there so we can save lives, so we can prevent other people from getting it, and especially children. How many children died from COVID, Ricky? Did you hear of one report of a child actually dying from a COVID, the verified death from a COVID infection? I can't even think of one.
I think there were some, but
okay. At 0.000000001% or something. Exactly. I'm not saying no child died. Obviously, if they had a compromised immune system or some other complicating disease, that could have resulted in a death. But it was so uncommon. They were the least risk group. They were least at risk for mortality or for serious complications. And yet you're forcing it on them, and now it's added to the childhood schedule?
They added it to... Well, they added, I think, the flu vaccine. Like in Massachusetts, they're doing some crazy stuff. They added the flu vaccine to the the childhood schedule to go back to school during COVID, which made zero sense. And I had so many parents come up to me, they're like, "How does this make any sense?" I'm like, honestly, how do any of the vaccines make any sense? I'm like, so it's okay for you to get the flu vaccine, or you're pro flu vaccine, but now that it's added to the schedule, you realize like, hey, we shouldn't be forced to have to get vaccines. I'm like, that's how you should look at all vaccines, is that you shouldn't have to be forced to get any of these things. And how about we talk about being proactive? Like, let's get to the root cause of the issue. If you can't handle a flu or a cold or whatever, then something's wrong with you. Like, you need some vitamin D, you need to get some exercise, you need to eat healthy foods, you need to, get your life in check, because if you're that afraid of the flu, which by the way, like even on a good year is what, like 30-40% effective. If you're worried about the flu, then you probably have bigger issues to deal with, and whatever poor lifestyle you're living is going to lead to many other health issues in the future. So, but nobody wanted to have those conversations, because the truth is they were trying to kill people. The Georgia Guidestones got blown up. They didn't want to continue just making it obvious that this depopulation agenda is a real one, and that the elites talk about it. And if there's any good that came out of this whole thing, is that all these conversations that were only discussed in the most fringe areas, on the most fringe, podcasts and YouTube channels and whatever, are now openly discussed by serious people in a serious manner, because you cannot avoid the fact that there are elites. There's people who want to control civilizations. They want to mold it in their image in the way that they want it. And they're trying, and social engineering happens, and that nothing that you hear on TV or you hear, in the media should be trusted, and you should question all of it. And unlike, the legal system, they should be guilty until proven innocent, because they've been proven guilty so many times. You can't believe anything that they say. And that's the way people should look at it. If you're a logical thinker, then there's no way that you should ever believe anything the media tells you in face value. And like I said, you should start as they're guilty for lying, and if I uncover that they're maybe telling the truth in this rare occasion, then that's okay. Then I'll get there. But I'm going to start with they're lying, and be very just skeptical of everything that they say. That's why for a long time the skeptics kind of took the word from us. I'm like, you guys aren't skeptics. You're just conspiracy theorist debunkers. I'm like, that's what you're trying to do. You're going around, and every conspiracy theory you're trying to debunk it, and you're not because a real skeptic are the conspiracy theorists, the people who are asking questions and saying, I know that we're being told this is what happened, but I don't know, man, there's some things that don't make sense. But the problem is, in average conversations with average people, you're afraid of having those discussions, because you're going to be looked at like a crazy person, because the media tells you you're a crazy person. For the longest time, even questioning vaccines, and I would try to find every path to meet somebody in the middle, and I'm like, how do I word this? How do I put this in a logical way that they can understand that there's nothing scientific about saying I give everybody a shot and nobody gets autism. Like, there's nothing scientific about that. I can't give any, and I know my listeners hate me using this example, but I've used it many of times because it's true and it's a good example. If I mandated peanut butter to every kid in the world, there's going to be some deaths. There's going to be some adverse reactions. So you're literally saying that vaccines are safer than peanut butter, because apparently vaccines are safe and effective. So it's just, it's, do you feel like there's some awakening, there's some that the mass population, little by little, we're going in the right direction to finally be aware of our surroundings and what's really going on?
Yeah. You mean the population at large is what you're saying?
Yeah, because the discussions that were fringe are no more fringe. They are now real discussions that people take seriously. I mean, people used to talk about child trafficking as like, ooh, like, did you hear that? The elites do this, and now it's like, yeah, like we there's evidence of it. Like there isn't a secret anymore. It's like that Hollywood pedophilia documentary, A Open Secret. It's like all these things are now open secrets. Like it's a secret that everybody knows about, but I don't want it to be like Hollywood where everybody knows about it but does nothing until somebody gets arrested. Weinstein gets arrested and all of a sudden everybody's like, yeah, I knew he was doing this. I knew he was doing. It's like we can't do that. People have to have the courage to speak out before it's easy to speak out. That's why during the COVID era, so many people in the alternative media community got mad at people, other content creators, other more mainstream content creators that now will speak out, but they didn't do it when it was most difficult. They didn't do it when you were doing it. They didn't do it when you are a attorney, you're a respected person, and you are putting the way people look at you, your career, your public, just perception of yourself on the line to fight for what's right. And many people didn't do that. And now, yeah, it's super easy to say, yeah, maybe this happened or maybe that happened or maybe we're lied to about that. But those people who came out when it was the hardest, Dr. Peter McCullough, who literally almost
Yeah.
lost his license, who I think for a while, I don't know if he got it back, but did lose his license and was getting, all these.
Well, he lost his board certification.
Okay.
Yeah, as a cardiologist, he did.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know.
This topic gets me worked up. I need to let you talk so I can calm down.
I love Dr. McCullough. As I said, he was in our film. He came to our conference last year. He's a friend of ours.
So are you
And he's so important in speaking out. And yes, he was one that he admits he trusted. He didn't question vaccines. He says it right in our film. He says, I never did. I never questioned them. And now he's one of the most prominent voices. But that's great. All right. Brian Festa doesn't need to be the most prominent voice. All right. I didn't get into this so I would be the number one leading voice in medical freedom. That's not why I got into this. I got into it because my son was injured. And yes, it's true. I was speaking out long before COVID even happened. I was involved in activism and speaking out and doing interviews like this. And so, yeah, and there's still a lot of people that don't know who I am, and that's fine. I'm not doing it for personal recognition. What I do hope is that we're able to bring these people to justice who have caused so much harm, so much devastation, whether it's literally losing lives or even people losing their jobs, right? People who have lost opportunities, been kicked out of college, all these things, their livelihoods, their careers have been destroyed. We're bringing them all to justice, and I want to continue to do that. And so what I do promote, obviously, is our organization. I don't promote my own name, but I do promote the name of We the Patriots USA. And the reason for that is I want it to grow and to flourish. And I do want the funding to increase so that we can help more people, because I turn away, and I've told you this many times before, I turn away way more people than I help. Yes, the people that we do help, that gets a lot of attention when we win victories or we file a new lawsuit. That's great, and that gets a lot of attention. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's way more people that need help that I'm not able to help unless we get more donations. So yes, you're seeing it up on the screen for those of you who are watching. That's our website. And if you go to the very top, there's a donate button at the bottom too. But if you go to the very top, there's also a donate button. Latest news and updates. Yeah, we just filed an appeal in the Second Amendment case in New Mexico. The kindergarten teacher who's being fired in California for using preferred pronouns or refusing to use preferred pronouns. I mean, the list goes on and on. We do a lot more than just vaccine stuff. And we can talk about that for a few minutes if you'd like, some of our other work. But to answer your question, yes, Ricky, I believe that the masses have woken up to this. When you have people like Bobby Kennedy on Joe Rogan, all right, which was great. I loved that interview. I think what Bobby has done, Bobby's a friend of mine. I think what he's done is brilliant in running for president because regardless of whether he has any shot, most people saying he doesn't, it doesn't really matter. The point is, he got these conversations into the mainstream that never would have been in the mainstream. He had mainstream interviews on mainstream media talking about vaccines and vaccine injury and stuff. How would that ever have happened? I mean, if you or I ran for president, they'd never give us 2 seconds. We'd never even have a chance. They wouldn't give us 2 seconds of airtime. But because he's a Kennedy, he knew that they were going to give him the airtime. I mean, he hasn't gotten as much as some of the other candidates, but still, he's gotten some major, major mainstream media interviews on TV and on radio, on podcasts, and he continues to speak out. And so I think that was a brilliant move. It's something that was sorely needed to have someone like that break into the mainstream political stage, the political arena. 2024 is going to be really, really interesting. This election. I don't talk a lot about politics because my organization can't get involved in politics, but just as a individual, it's going to be very interesting to watch it.
I'm sorry, I was muted for a second. But as an individual, many of us have just been huge fans of Robert Kennedy Jr. because he is a Kennedy. He will get the attention and the respect of people talking about these topics that the average person wouldn't, and he put his reputation on the line. He has the history of environmental lawsuits. He knows science. He understands science. He understands what big corporations do, how they lie, how they cheat, how they steal, and all the corruption in that world. But some people who were huge fans of his prior to running, because once you run, some of your other perspectives and opinions have to be discussed, your geopolitical perspectives, your opinions on so many other issues. Has that affected your overall look on how you look at him? I know some people that are like, oh, screw Kennedy because of this, but I personally, I am so grateful for the work he's done in the medical freedom world and in the children health defense and all the backlash he got. And he did it knowing that he was stepping into, a battle zone and did it anyways. That to me, I'm so grateful about that if I disagree with him on other things, I'm kind of okay with it because I feel like he's done more good than bad. What's your opinion?
Well, again, speaking as an individual, no, it hasn't changed my perspective of him. I mean, I pretty much knew where he stood on a lot of issues. Listen, he's a Kennedy, he's a Democrat. He's not one of these far left radical progressive Democrats, though. He's certainly not. Look what he's saying. Look at his statements recently about the border crisis and how he's talking about securing the border and how horrible what Joe Biden is doing, just letting people pour across our border. We need to secure our border. I mean, when was the last time you heard a Democrat say we need to secure the borders? We need to close the borders. You just don't hear that. And listen, everybody has different opinions about the border crisis, but and obviously you're an immigrant yourself, but you weren't part of a caravan of 500,000 people pouring across the Mexican border. I don't think. All right. I don't have any knowledge of it, but you're here legally. All right. You're a citizen. All right. So I love everyone from around the world. Let's have as many people in the world who want to come to America, but let's do it the right way. All of us, almost all of us, were children of immigrants. There's very few pure Native Americans anymore. All of us have some immigrant blood. All right. And at some point, our ancestors had to come into this country. Most of them did it legally, though. Not all of them. But most of them did, and had to get papers and had to go through, the process of becoming a citizen. And it wasn't necessarily always an easy process, and it's still not. There's a waiting list. You can't just come in from any country, first in line, any day you choose, just walk into the country. You're not supposed to be able to. There's a process. And I understand there's refugees and there's people that are in horrible war-torn countries and third world banana republic country. I mean, listen, our country, unfortunately, is heading down that road, not necessarily yet from an economic standpoint, but certainly from a political standpoint, it's very scary how people are being persecuted for having opposing political beliefs. You see what's happening to President Trump. Um, love him or hate him, the second one party gets to use the justice system to persecute the leader of another party, you're in South America, my friend. Okay, this is no longer the United States world leader, number one freedom place for freedom, republic. It looks more like the People's Republic or like Venezuela or something. It's getting very, very scary what's happening. So yeah, you asked about Bobby Kennedy. I mean, again, I mentioned I've worked with him. He's a friend of mine. I'm in contact with him from time to time. Actually, I just spoke to him on the phone about a month ago. But I try not to bother him too many times these days. I did send him a text about Shot Dead, and sharing it, and that's what he responded to me about. But very rarely will I bother him these days because he's on the road all the time, and he's campaigning, and his schedule is grueling. So I try not to be a pest, and so it'll be very rare. It's only if it's something really important that I want to bring to his attention that I'll reach out to him. But
So do you agree that even if people do disagree with, because obviously he's done a lot of interviews, he's asked a lot of questions about a lot of different issues, that people shouldn't, because I've seen it, like I said, in the alternative media community, where people are trashing him on this one topic or this other topic. I'm like, this guy literally was a punching bag for all of media because he was the spokesperson, literally the most famous person, the face of the medical freedom, just community. And I just feel like some people are turning their back on him because they disagree with certain things. And I'm just like, this guy is still fighting the same people we're fighting. And even if I do disagree with him on certain topics, and I know, some one topic that has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way is his perspective on Israel and stuff like that. I mean, Alex Jones got a lot of crap for that too throughout the years. And guess what? He had people on who disagreed with him. He was willing to have the discussion, and I love that. Like, it doesn't make them a shill. It doesn't make them a CIA agent. It doesn't mean that they're like evil. Sometimes people just disagree. And Alex Jones was like, "Hey, you know what? You guys think I'm doing this because I'm a Israel shill, but no, this is just my opinion. I'll have somebody on who disagrees with me, and we'll have this type of discussion." That's what people should do, and that's what people should be open to. Just because you disagree with one thing, doesn't mean that they're your enemy. And what it does, this divide and conquer, is like all this infighting just gets us our focus on the wrong things instead of really pointing the finger at the real enemies.
Yeah. Um, you know, I don't agree with Bobby on everything. I don't agree with Trump on everything. I don't agree with Biden on most things. Okay. I don't agree with most of the candidates, Nikki Haley, whatever, on many things. But you have to find the things where you do have common ground and support them, at least on those platforms. You may choose not to vote for them, but I'm not out there campaigning for or against anyone. My vote, I'll make that decision. I don't know if it'll be quite a game day decision. I'll probably have that decision made ahead of time, but right now, it's still out there, and I'm still, looking at everybody and seeing, where the chips are going to fall. I think I know where they're going to fall, but anything could happen in the next, what is it, 8 months? I don't know, whatever it is. It's coming right up, 9 months. So it's going to be very, very, very interesting. But yeah, we have to find common ground. I mean, the one criticism that I do hear from a political standpoint is that people are concerned that he's going to take either votes away from one or the other major party candidate because he's running as an independent now. And they're concerned that that will help either get Trump or get Biden reelected. The thinking seems to be now, since most of his supporters or many of his supporters are people that have defected from Trump, actually, and people in the medical freedom community, which now, as we talked about earlier, is millions more strong. The concern is that he's going to pull votes away from Trump, and that'll help Biden get elected because nobody is giving him a serious chance, whether that's fair or not. I'm just telling you what the political pundits are saying. And if they're even remotely true, if they're even remotely correct, what we're seeing and what people are saying about his chances, I think there is a danger of that. I mean, he's going to be a very strong independent party, third party candidate, maybe the strongest we've seen since Ross Perot, maybe the strongest in United States history. He's going to get a lot of votes. Okay. Whether or not he wins, he's going to get a lot of votes, and he could pull votes away from one of the major candidates and help the other win, especially if it's a close election. Now, of course, there's the other camp that says this is all theater, it's all planned out, and it's staged, and the elections are rigged anyway. So whoever they want to get in is going to get in. So it doesn't really matter if they really want Trump to get in or they really want Biden to get in. They're going to get in regardless of whether Kennedy runs. I'm not saying that's true, but you and I both know that is a very popular opinion, especially in our circles nowadays. And, I can't blame people for having that perspective because, it's hard to believe that there wasn't some, major, what do you want to call it? Malfeasance, I guess is the word, with regard to the 2020 election and probably prior elections and the other elections since the midterm elections in 2022 as well. There's some real funny business going on, and when you see these trucks of ballots being taken in after the polls have closed late at night, in the middle of the night, and absentee balloting is just rampant. Anyone can vote by mail, mail-in balloting, mail-in voting. I mean, there's so many opportunities to rig it now. It's hard to believe that it's not rigged. I don't want to believe it. I want to believe that at least the local elections, at least some elections in this country, are pure and good still. But I just see so much evidence of tampering and results that don't match what appears to be what I'm hearing and seeing with my own eyes and ears and eyes, as it were. And I'm not just talking about in a vacuum or an echo chamber, even just, it doesn't even match polling data anymore. It's so weird. Nothing is as it seems anymore. Nothing is expected from when we were growing up, It just, it's
But
it's a
it's always been
it's just
manipulated.
hard.
The elections have always been manipulated. That's why this last election, when people are like, "Oh no," and I'm like, "There was no manipulation." I'm like, I don't know if it was rigged per se, and when I say that, I mean like, was the manipulation enough to change the outcome? But there, without a doubt, there's always been some fuckery in elections. I mean, watch Hacking Democracy, that HBO documentary. It's older, about how easy it is to just, change the outcomes in these voting machines. When you look at just like all the pieces of evidence of like something was going on. I mean, nobody thought that elections were fair when Al Gore was running against Bush and they had that issue in Florida. All of a sudden, the left now thinks that there's no fuckery in elections, and it's like, to me, it probably goes both ways. Like they're both doing something that to kind of help their opportunities. I remember even just in a local election, I was doing construction in some area near the projects of Holyoke, or yeah, I believe it was Holyoke, and they just had somebody who was running for mayor. He literally rented buses, brought buses to these projects, and was knocking on doors and said, anybody who go down and vote for me, I'll give you a ride. And like, I'm like, that's kind of like, if you don't have the motivation to get out of your house to go vote, like maybe you shouldn't be voting. Like maybe, if I'm somewhere in between and I'm not passionate about somebody, I probably shouldn't be voting. Like I obviously haven't done enough research. So to me, that's crazy. But that's just one little sample size. Like this is, you zoom out and you look at elections, like there's always going to be fuckery. There's probably fuckery now with all these illegals that are coming in, that now if they sign up for the military, they can become citizens, which means they also get to vote and all this other, who knows what, long game plan that they're scheming, for the next election. The only thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that I'm not a Trumper, I'm not a MAGA guy, but the more they try to prevent him from running, the more I think people are gonna see him as like, hey, you know what? Like this guy is anti-establishment, because
Right.
everybody in the establishment is trying to take him down. Everybody's trying to,
Right.
and that's the way I look. I almost think it works in his benefit.
It does. It does. And I've said that over and over again. The more they come after him, the more he just keeps bouncing back up. And his numbers go up every single time there's an announcement about a new indictment or a new ruling against him in court. His numbers just keep skyrocketing. And I honestly think that, so much of it is politically motivated. These cases that have been brought against him, they were brought for political reasons. They weren't brought because of any actual wrongdoing, or even if there is some wrongdoing, it's so much more heavy-handed toward him than it is to anyone else. And that's just not fair. That's not equal justice for all, right? That's okay. He does, something on his tax return, this or that, and every other person in the world, pretty much, who's doing it, the business people in the world, it's fine. It's not considered, even it's not enforced. Okay, even if it is illegal. Now, I don't know if he's done anything illegal. Okay, obviously, if he does, then he's subject to prosecution like anyone else. But everyone should be subject to prosecution then, not just Trump or not just the people who are your political enemies. So it's just really not. It's a two-tier justice system, and it's just really, it's disheartening that that's where we've come in many ways. And it's not even so much it's not the courts. I'm not calling out any courts or judges, but when I say two-tier justice system, it's these prosecutors and who they're bringing these charges against selectively. There's something called prosecutorial discretion. And so they're choosing to go after certain people with certain political persuasions, especially Donald Trump. The judge, he gets a case or she gets a case in front of her. They've got to try it. If there's a jury trial, they've got to try it just like any other case. They can't say, "Oh, I don't think this is fair, so we're not going to try this case," right? A case is brought, there's charges brought. The case has to be handled like it would for anyone else. So I'm not even, faulting the judges or the courts, but it's these prosecutors and people who are bringing charges against him. I just think they're, pun intended here, trumped up charges because of who he is, because he's the leader of the Republican Party, right? He's going to be the nominee. There's no one else who's even close. Nikki Haley thinks she's fooling herself into that she's going to overtake him. She's not. There's no one even remotely close. That's why DeSantis was smart enough to drop out. He knew he wasn't going to win, right? So Trump is far and away the leader. They don't want him reelected, so they're charging him with these things. They're indicting him. I mean, it's again, this is not the country I grew up in. This never happened. I mean, obviously, this is a first in history. When did you ever see a former president with, this many, or any really criminal charges brought against him or I mean, we had Richard Nixon and he was pardoned, of course, by Ford. But it's like, this is just beyond that. This is that, on steroids, like way beyond anything we've ever seen. And anyway, I didn't want this to be a political discussion. Do you want to know about any other cases we have before we wrap up here?
Yeah. Sorry for making it. It just,
No, it's okay.
Yeah. I think these are things that people are thinking about and discussing, and I'm glad
it's 2024, man. This is what I'm going to be talking about this year. Any interview I do, it's going to probably come up during the conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a bumpy ride, and it's, I think a lot of craziness is going to happen this year, and who knows, who knows how far they'll take it. Who know? I mean, the lengths. I still think it's hilarious that Trump, during one of the debates, brought a bunch of women that Bill Clinton sexually harassed and allegedly even raped, and it's just like that's how far it can go. But it's pretty wild. But for people listening who aren't familiar with We the Patriots USA, and we talked about vaccine injuries, we talked about things with vaccine are related to vaccines. What other type of things do you guys deal with, and what other issues do you help people with?
What don't we deal with? That's the better question. I think anything to do with your individual rights, your individual freedoms, your constitutional rights, and beyond. We will be here to defend you. We have a saying here, very simply, our slogan here at We the Patriots USA is when you stand up to tyrants, we stand up for you. So basically anyone who's being oppressed by a tyrannical government overreach, by, big corporations, whether it's big pharma or, anyone else. We have our case, of course, against the PGA Tour in defense of Taryn Gregson. That march is on in Florida. We have a case even against the state of Ohio and the EPA for what they did in East Palestine, what they didn't do, what they did wrong in East Palestine, and lying to people and poisoning all those people in that community and beyond. We have our religious exemption vaccine case in Connecticut. That's a case that is now at the Supreme Court. It's being reviewed by the clerks and the justices right now. We have appealed that to the Supreme Court in December. And so now we're just waiting to hear whether our petition is granted. If it is, we will have arguments before the High Court, either later this year or more likely at this point in the fall. So we are hoping and praying that that case gets taken, because that could restore religious exemptions for school children, not only in Connecticut, but in New York, Maine, California, everywhere they've been lost or everywhere that children don't have them. It would open the door, if we win that case, for religious exemptions being restored all across the country and preserved all across the country. We take on medical kidnapping cases. So we won a huge victory last year in the state of Missouri of 4 children that were taken out of the home simply because the parents were trying an alternative medical treatment known as chlorine dioxide to treat their son's autism, and they were having incredible results with it, and he was improving and his symptoms were improving. And yet, just because they were using that, they had 4 children taken, all 4 of their minor children taken away from them. And we were able to get the children back home because they were placed in foster care. We were able to get the children back home and get custody restored to the parents. We have a case in California right now that I mentioned a few moments ago in defense of a kindergarten teacher in Oakland, California, who's being fired simply because she refused to use preferred pronouns to refer to her 5-year-old female student. Yes, you heard that right. 5 years old. The parents and the school district are pushing for her to be transitioned. And this teacher, who's a devout Catholic, said, I won't be a part of this. I'm not going to call a girl a boy. I'm not doing it. And she's being fired for it. So now we've taken up her legal defense. And Second Amendment, I mentioned that too. We have a case in New Mexico about against Michelle Lujan Grisham, the governor there, who placed a public carry ban. You probably heard about it back in the fall, in September. We won a temporary restraining order against her, but now the case has gone up to the 10th Circuit. So we just filed our appeal brief yesterday to the 10th Circuit. We have a case in Connecticut against Governor Lamont for his open carry ban. So up until 2023, it was legal. In the whole history of Connecticut, it had always been legal to openly carry firearms. But the legislature passed a ban. Governor Lamont signed it into law. And so now we have a lawsuit against the state, against Governor Lamont for the state's ban on the open carry of firearms. Milford Christian Church in Milford, Connecticut, that's another case. The state tried to shut down a preschool and daycare, Little Eagles Preschool and Daycare at Milford Christian, simply because they were still honoring vaccine exemptions even after the exemption was repealed. Even after 2021, they said, hey, we're a church. We're still going to honor religious beliefs, regardless of the fact that that law was passed. We believe we have a right under the Constitution, under the First Amendment, to still honor religious beliefs of our parishioners, of our parents, our families here. And they said, well, you better not, or we're going to shut you down. Either catch all the kids up on their vaccines, kick them out, or we're going to shut you down. And we said, no. We stepped in. I think there are only 5 or 6 days left before they were about to shut down the daycare. We filed a federal lawsuit against them. And to this day, that was March of last year, so it's almost a year. To this day, that daycare is still open in Milford. And we're continuing to litigate that. It's still in district court actually now. We just filed an amended pleading, but we will keep you posted about that and all of our other lawsuits. If anyone wants to know what we're doing and stay up to date, hey, what's happening with this case? What's happening with that case? Of course, you can always email us at info@wethepatriotsusa.org, or my personal email, Brian, BRIAN, @wethepatriotsusa.org. But sign up for our email list. That's the easiest way. All right. Because that's the way, trust me, whenever there's a major decision, a major lawsuit filed, or a major decision, a ruling, an appeal filed, we immediately send out, or nearly immediately send out an email to all of our subscribers. So go to contact at the top of our webpage at wethepatriotsusa.org. Subscribe. There's a subscribe button under there. Click on that, subscribe to our email list. You can also follow us on Telegram, join our Telegram channel, follow us on X/Twitter, Facebook. We're still on there, believe it or not. And variety of other Instagram, TikTok. I mean, we're everywhere. We Gab, Getter, Truth Social, pretty much LinkedIn, even pretty much every social media platform. We have a page or a channel. Rumble, follow our Rumble channel. You can see Shot Dead as well as episodes of Faithful Freedom with Darren Gregson. We just have so much to share, because that's the other thing we do. Besides litigation, we produce content like our movie Shot Dead, our podcast, our vaccine safety awareness marathon, which happens every September, and the list goes on and on. So all of your donations go 100% go into the organization to fuel these things. We want to expand. We want to expand our legal team. We want to expand our reach. We want to be able to take more lawsuits on. That's only going to happen with donations, because we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization. We're a charity. We're fueled 100% by donations. We don't have any private investors coming in giving us, we don't have any angel investors giving us millions of dollars. It's just ordinary people who are putting their own money up and saying, I believe in what you do. I want to get behind you. I want to help you guys. So you can sign up for a monthly donation. We have Patriot memberships. You can get a free gift and some access to exclusive content. You'll see those as well on our homepage at wethepatriotsusa.org. But yeah, we would really greatly appreciate it, because I know times are tough. Most of your listeners probably don't have the means to really help us out very much, but maybe you can give us one donation, even if it's only $10 or something, $20, just even one time. If you can sign up for a monthly donation, that's great. But maybe there's one person listening, all right, who has financial means, who is in a better place than most of us, and who could, if they so chose, support us in a major way, and give us a major gift. If you want to have a conversation about that, I don't expect people just to open up their wallets and write checks, although it's happened before on rare occasion. But if you want to have a conversation about that, if you're someone listening who likes what you hear, you like what you see on our website, and you want to have a conversation with me and or my business partner, Don, about the organization and how you can get behind it, please reach out. Again, Brian, Brian, at wethepatriotsusa.org or info@wethepatriotsusa.org. Both of those inboxes are monitored daily by your Don. We'd be happy to speak with you. We can set up a call, a conference call. We can even meet if we can make that happen. And yeah, we'd like to talk about that, because obviously we want to take this to the next level, Ricky. You've been with us right from the start, even with Connecticut Freedom Alliance, our predecessor organization. You were there supporting us back then. You had me on your show back then. And so let's try to take this thing to the next level. All right. We're doing great work, from lawsuits from New York to California. We've got events, everything, but money is tight, even for us. I mean, Bidenomics has really had it's put the squeeze on us. I mean, on all nonprofits, really, because think about it, when you can't even put food on the table or gas in the tank, the last thing you're thinking about is giving to charity, right? So it's really hurt nonprofits like ours, and 2023 was a down year. So we had to take sort of a step backward a little bit, but we're hoping we can take 2 steps forward in 2024 and do even bigger and better things, because you know, there's a lot of work still to be done. This is not over. We're not out of the COVID era. A lot of people think we are, but even beyond COVID, there's just so many people that need help. What's going on right now with, you know, whether it's the LGBT agenda, whether it's trying to steal our right to keep and bear arms from us, whether it's suppressing free speech, we defend that as well. We defend free speech rights, I should say. There's just so much need right now, even beyond medical freedom, religious freedom, which obviously are you know, main areas of focus for us. There's just so many people that need help, and we want to be able to help them. So People are disappointed. A lot of times people will reach out to me, and if I have to tell them we don't have the resources to take their case, they're pretty bummed. They say, "Oh, I really thought you guys would be able to help me. I thought you guys, had a bigger staff, or you'd be able to do this or that." And I just have to tell them it's not for lack of desire, lack of wanting to help you. We want to help every single person that we realistically could help, but without the funds, it's hard to do that. So, thank you as always for having me on. And I will definitely keep you posted as these cases develop, because there's going to be a lot more news coming out. If this Connecticut religious exemption case gets taken by the United States Supreme Court, that's going to be the biggest case in the history of medical freedom, maybe ever, but at least since Jacobson, honestly, which is the 1905 case that everyone cites to say the state can force and compel vaccinations. If this case gets taken, this will be the biggest one since Jacobson. And I'm not saying it'll overturn Jacobson, but it's going to go a long way. If we win, it's going to go a long way to undoing that damage and restoring freedom, religious and medical freedom, at the very least for school children. But honestly, it'll be the shockwaves, the ripple effect, as you would say, Ricky, is going to go far beyond even schools. If the Supreme Court of the United States makes a pronouncement that the states have to respect religious freedom with regard to vaccination, that's going to have a ripple effect all across this country and the world. I did an interview with Joe Bond in New Zealand, who was on. She's got her own podcast now. She was one of our guests for last year's marathon. And we were talking about this, how when a major decision comes out of the Supreme Court of the United States, courts all around the world follow it even. Okay? Not every single court in every country, but Europe in particular, and even where she is, New Zealand, Australia, they take note. The Supreme Court of the United States has made a major ruling. It can have an impact on their court decisions. Again, not every decision. I'm not saying universally they follow the Supreme Court. Obviously, that's not true. But there are major decisions that are historical precedents. They do look to that, and they do cite that in their own decisions. So it's important that we win here, not just for this country, but for the whole world. This is the future of humanity. I mean, really, if we don't have a right to say what goes in our bodies, if we don't have a right to stand on our faith and say that we're going to honor our God the way we know we have to, and we believe we have to, if we're not allowed to even do that, what are we? I mean, we're not human beings anymore. We're certainly not free. I mean, what are we? If we're just completely controlled by the state and we have no mind of our own, what are we? Why are we here?
Yeah, without a doubt, organizations like yours are so important and crucial. They don't seem important and crucial until you need them, so let's help fund them. Let's help. Any little donation goes a long way. If a small percentage of people who watch and listen to the Ripple Effect podcast gave $1, it would go a long way. So, no, like I always tell people when donating to this podcast, it's like no donation is too little. And of course, like you said, not everybody's in a good financial situation. Just buying groceries can put you into negative in the bank account. So I completely understand that. But share the episodes, the information, post it on your social media platforms. That's a free way, inexpensive way of getting the word out there and helping fight against the algorithms that, are suppressing conversations like these. And, there's two documentaries that I've watched, that I think about organizations like yours. One is The Syndrome. I don't know if you ever watched that, about shaking baby syndrome, where the experts were blaming the children or the parents for shaking their baby and giving them this brain damage. And then it took a outside expert who was a expert in car crashes to come in and say, hey, all those parents you locked up, all those kids you took away from their parents, like that was all based on crappy information, because I understand car crashes and you can't have that type of brain damage unless you have some neck damage. And so parents were having their kids taken away from them by the government, by the medical world, by these experts. And then there's another one called Take Care of Maya, which is a fairly new one. It's on Netflix.
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's another amazing one. We'll just pull at your heartstrings. I highly recommend
and they
it.
won.
They won, yeah.
They won recently. Huge, huge judgment. What was it 237 million or something?
Yeah, but the sad part of the story is that they
She
won,
lost her mother. Yeah.
lost her mother. Yeah. So, spoiler alert. But either way, it's
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You should have said spoiler alert. Edit that in maybe. But yeah, I
it's
mean,
it's
but actually, it doesn't. That's been all over the news. But it doesn't tell. We haven't revealed how she died, so you could go back and watch that. Obviously, no amount of money can replace her mother. But the bottom line is the this is an example of how our justice system really, really did get it right. In that, that's a huge award, way more than is usually given for any kind of wrongful death. By the way, you don't usually get 200 million. You're lucky if you get 5 or 10 million. Okay, so this is a case where the jury, really realized this was an injustice, and we have to give her as much as we possibly can to make up for it, because that's all you can. Is money going to bring her back? No, but it's all we have to give restitution. We don't have the power to bring someone back to life. We can give someone a whole boatload of money, so at least the rest of their life won't be as difficult, and maybe they can have, some kind of, a little bit of comfort that or a lot of comfort that they wouldn't have had. It's a great documentary. It's very well done, and actually, our medical kidnapping case came out right around the time this was really making big news. We didn't plan it that way. The Guidrys, Amanda and Paul, reached out to us just around this time when this documentary was all the buzz last year. And so we did talk about this in one of our, we have a podcast episode with Taryn where the Guidrys were interviewed, the parents who had their children stolen from them, medically kidnapped. And we talk about, and then we had another podcast episode with attorney Beth Maloney, who's an excellent attorney, expert in medical kidnapping. And we also discussed Take Care of Maya in that episode as well.
Yeah, and I think these documentaries are important because it kind of highlights the issue with medical freedom and how, just being at the wrong place at the wrong time, having the wrong expert, the wrong government, think that you're a threat to your own kid, you can just have them ripped away from you. And nothing, as a parent, nothing could scare you more than being in those type of situations. So we, the Patriots USA, are very important and very crucial in regards to fighting for those freedoms and parents' freedoms and medical freedoms. So without a doubt, I can't thank you enough for all the hard work. And you're attorney. There's plenty of other fields with your expertise where you could make a lot more money, but you chose to do something that's a lot more fulfilling. And I really thank you for that. And hopefully I can continue to help by just spreading the word and keep updated on what you guys are doing. And yeah, and We the Patriots USA, I'll put all the links in the show description. I'll put links to the documentary. Please, people, share it. It's a easy way to inexpensive way of helping Brian and the organization and getting the word out there. Share it on any platform you're on and any video, social media platform, anything like that. Share it, post it. Don't be afraid of some possible backlash. And the truth, getting the truth out there is important. And thank you again, Brian, for always taking time to come on the show. And I know how expensive attorney fees are, so I am truly grateful for you always taking so many hours out of your life to chat with me, and keep up the amazing and important work.
Thanks, Ricky. God bless.
See you.